positions and stuff. Almost made it out of there. Oh, and no parking brake. Yeah, where is this thing gonna go? So for starters, we had to get the DC-9 from where we had initially dropped it off last winter to its new build site. So while everybody else was busy working on the DC-6, nobody was around to even help me spot. I grabbed a loader from next door from one of my neighbors and started picking up the nose of the airplane and slowly dragging it out onto the driveway, backing it down our driveway slash taxiway, and working it into position. Since everybody decided to take lunch right now, nobody wants to come spot for me. Figure I'll just do it on my own. And we'll use the drone for a little extra help. It's looking good. I'm out here pulling forms. We've got our concrete, should be hard enough to get the airplane on today. Got Landon pulling sandbags out of all these ballast tanks. Got to cut them open before we can even get them out of the airplane. Get all that stuff stacked up and stored. Got our septic tank going in. Got the tie downs to tie the airplane down to all these big pieces of concrete. A few more forms to pull. There's lots of stuff to do before you can even start doing stuff. Got the whole belly emptied yesterday. There's a ton in here. Still a lot of bolts and things we're all gonna save. Pick them up with a magnet. Inventory them. Make it all count. That's your fuel tank right back there. Big old fuel tank. But a whole lot to do before we can really even do stuff of building an airplane house. One big step here was to get power and water run over to the DC-9. We trenched that over from the cabins we had already built alongside the runway last summer. And yeah, water table's pretty high here, pretty mucky, but had to bury that water line 10 feet deep so it won't freeze in the winter, and then ran all of our electric about 2 feet deep so it'd be good and safe as we're plowing the runway. This one we're building more on top of the surface with 1 foot thick concrete slabs for each section of the landing gear, so for the mains and for the nose gear. And then we'll weld the actual landing gear of the aircraft to the steel reinforcement that is inside of the concrete to hold that all down in place. Why are we doing it differently? It's not that the piles were a bad idea, it's just that I have no idea if the piles are gonna work all winter, or if that's gonna heave or do stuff weird, or if we have an earthquake, what's gonna happen. I have no idea if this method is gonna work very well with the concrete and all that, but well, it was worth a shot. So kind of hedging your bets. If one fails, hopefully the other one doesn't. Maybe they both fail, maybe they both work. Hopefully they both work. The 727 we also are gonna be doing on piles. So 2 different systems for the 3 different airplanes. The right tool for the job. Just had to move it about 2 inches. That's what a Subaru is good for. Subaru, yes, it can actually tow a DC-9 if you're only trying to tow it a few inches. It does work to roll it forward those few inches. We got the framing up for the JetBridge, and overall, I mean, it's been an interesting experience out here this summer. We've had some amazing guys working with us, other guys that, well, not so great guys to either quit or be fired or whatever. Some pretty, major framing mistakes that professional framers at 40, 50 bucks an hour shouldn't be making. I think whatever the last contractor did that was screwing down the roof felt, we just should not do that, right? We should do not that. That would be what we shouldn't do. That's why he don't work here no more, because that's just dumb. But we'll have to measure each one and block it off and fix what he did. But we were able to fix a lot of those mistakes, got the JetBridge built, attached to the airplane, so we had our entryway there. And the next step after that was to think about getting the wings reattached to the airplane. It would be nice if it could be welded, it'd be prettier, but instead we just went with the straight up bolting. So we got it all lined up, used some under hoist jacks, kind of precariously trying to find the center of gravity of that wing. It's not the easiest thing to do when they're not balanced quite right and you don't have any data on exactly how to balance the thing, and you're just hanging it there with an excavator that's constantly bleeding off hydraulics as all the seals and O-rings inside those rams are kind of leaky. But got it lined up, got it bolted together, And once that wing was on, the next side went a lot quicker. We figured out we could just put flanges, one on the bottom, one on the top, and meet them together, drill the holes, put bolts through there. Again, just Ace Hardware bolts, 1/2-inch bolts from Ace Hardware. They seem to work pretty good. We are going to be supporting the wingtips anyways, so not too worried about that, that strength there, but it's 1/4-inch aluminum that's 4 inches wide, and then we just cut those into little strips to kind of make the curve work around the wing to make a nice strong bond there. Again, we're not flying these things despite what the FAA thought we might be trying to do when we were going to go ahead and register them, and then they decided to investigate if they were airworthy or not. Probably not going to be airworthy anytime soon, but who knows, maybe one day we win the lottery and we fix them up just right and go fly them. Highly doubtful. Anyways, next up after the wings going on, we wanted to go ahead and get a hole cut into the airplane to have the double doors coming out to the wing deck. Some of the challenges there is, well, it's pretty easy to just take a saw and cut through that aluminum, but you don't really know what exactly you're cutting through, and you do have 55 feet of tail overhanging, cantilevered out past those main gear. So some concern of how much structure we're really cutting into this airplane. Obviously it was designed to fly, but we're making some pretty big cuts here and removing some pretty big pieces of structure. Also, it's a lot of structure. It's fairly thick. And so we were cutting away at it and tugging on it with the excavator. It wasn't quite ready. Had to go back and cut a little deeper, cut from the inside, cut from the outside, get those cut lines to line up nice and pretty. And then eventually we're able to remove those emergency overwing exits off of the airplane. Yeah. Success! And we had our big old gaping hole for our wing deck. We'll come back and start framing that up here soon, but the next step was to get the vertical and the horizontal reattached to the tail, and that was a challenge. Part of the biggest challenge there was I don't have a crane or anything tall enough to actually hang that vertical over top the tail and lower it down straight on nice and safe. The excavator's just a few feet too short. Luckily, it's an excavator, so I was sitting around having a beer that evening. It's like, hey, why don't we just dig a big hole, make a big mound of dirt, drive the excavator up the mound of dirt, and that'll tip the machine, which will raise the arm and the bucket, and we'll have the extra few feet we need. So that did work out. But again, center of gravity issues, trying to get it strung up just right. And being that it's not a uniformly distributed weight across these objects, across the wings, across the vertical, across the horizontal, they just behave in all sorts of weird ways when you have a lot of weight concentrated on one side and not much on the other. So the way they swing and bounce, it's really weird. Plus that excavator, again, constantly bleeding down, and it's at its maximum capacity or near there when you're stuck all the way out with that boom and the stick in the bucket all the way out there, super far out, lots of leverage pulling it back down, so the hydraulics are bleeding down constantly. So trying to get that vertical in place, we could kind of get it lined up, and with those two guys hanging out there on the tail with not much to grab onto for support, hanging on for dear life, their job was to quickly drill through that aluminum plate that was already riveted on to one side to the airplane, one side to the vertical, and then quickly drill and get some rivets in there, because 2 or 3 rivets is not going to hold the thing, 10 or 20 may not, but if we could get 30 or 40 in there before the excavator really started to bleed off, that would hold it in place, and we could finish it out with an extra 100, 200, or whatever it might be. Each rivet's good for about 300 pounds of shear force. How much do we need overall? No clue. Just making it up as we go, but I know that when we were looking at it and the guys were like, hey, so what do you want these? Like 3, 4, 6-inch centers? It's like, no, how about 1-inch centers? How about as tight as possible, as many as possible without compromising the integrity of that aluminum? Use a ton of them. I'd rather spend an extra 14 bucks on rivets and make sure this thing is way overbuilt so it's never gonna come down for us. One airplane house, 2 airplane houses. And third one's gonna go over there. Kinda sketchy. It was then time to wrap up the dormer over that wing deck area. So just short on manpower, short on time before winter hits. I was out there until dark one day, which about, you know, that time of year, 8:30, 9 p.m., framing up as much as I could, trying to get a roof on the thing because we already were laying subfloor inside the airplane at that point, and we did not want that subfloor to get wet. So I was out there trying to get a frame up, get a tarp over it because it was constantly raining, and we wanted to make sure we got the airplane dried in. That was our big goal before winter would hit, is to have the airplane dried in. Once we had that dormer done, had a roof on it, that was an interesting experience of how some of that stuff went together, standing on top of the airplane, trying not to fall off.
Yeah, I like it. Camera like
It was then time for subfloor inside the airplane so we could actually walk around there. It did take us about 2 weeks with 3 to 4 guys ripping out the inside of the airplane, just gutting it entirely, making it ready for spray foam and making it ready for subfloor so that we actually had real aluminum floor joists. We had insulation underneath that, and we could actually get a real floor in there to walk around. It was getting pretty difficult to walk around there and not fall, stepping from joist to joist to joist and then falling down several feet into the belly or wherever it was with all that kind of sharp aluminum around there. So we got our first layer of subfloor down, and the next step after that, getting ready for spray foam. Trying to figure out how we were gonna trim out the windows, and we were still kind of on the fence of how we're gonna do that exactly. So if you guys have any ideas, trying to figure out how to trim out each window without having to trim out each window, right? Like, we don't really want to have to trim out 78 windows in this airplane. So if you have any quick ideas of what sort of interior finishing we could use, whether it's be plywood or shiplap, or how you would do that around each window, because doing it the way they do in the airlines isn't really possible. That's not good insulation, that's not pretty looking, it just doesn't work very well. Plus, we don't have those materials. That was one thing we learned from the DC-6 to the DC-9 is more spray foam. And it is crazy expensive, over $10,000 to get this thing spray foamed and get it ready and have all that stuff sprayed in there. But it's super critical, super important. Aluminum just saps the heat right out of stuff. And if you're gonna try to live in these things any time of the year in Alaska, but especially in winter, you need a ton of foam. And we don't want 8 inches of foam because we don't want to really intrude upon that space. We can't use rock wool or fiberglass. If you guys have any other ideas on insulation, definitely please let us know in the comments below, because trying to use fiberglass or rock wool, not only do you have moisture issues, but you also have a thickness issue. So spray foam was the best thing that I could come up with. Totally open to ideas if you guys have others. But overall, we're in a pretty good place for winter to come. We're gonna keep chipping away on it. We'll have more updates for you guys soon. Make sure you subscribe and ring that bell down there on the bottom right so you get notified when we do post more videos and more updates of the DC-9. You can start booking it for summer 2024 if you are interested in staying in it. And you can actually stay right now in the DC-6. It is live and up and running on Airbnb. So if you're looking for a cool little getaway, check that out. The link is in the description below for all of that stuff. Any questions on this or anything else, you guys know what to do. Leave it in the comments below or hit us up on our website at fly8mikealpha.com. And if you cannot fly every day, then fly8mikealpha.com, and we'll see you guys in the next video.